Have you ever asked yourself this question? What really happened to the men who walked side by side with Jesus? We know their names: Peter, James, John, Thomas, and the rest. We know they were chosen by Christ himself. They witnessed his miracles, ate with him, laughed with him, and after his death and resurrection, they turned the world upside down. But what we rarely ask is this: how did their story end? The Bible gives us glimpses. A few deaths are recorded. But much of what we know comes from ancient historians, church traditions, and writings passed down through generations. These accounts paint a picture that is at once brutal, fascinating, and deeply inspiring. Because here's the shocking truth: almost every one of the apostles died violently. They were hunted, tortured, beaten, crucified, and even skinned alive, all because they refused to stop preaching the name of Jesus. Only one of them escaped a violent death, but not without first surviving torture and exile. The rest gave their lives willingly, proving beyond doubt that they truly believed in what they preached. People do not willingly die for something they know to be a lie. Their deaths are living proof of their faith. So in this video, we're going to uncover the untold deaths of Jesus' 12 apostles. What really happened? Stay with me to the very end, because what you're about to discover will not only shock you, but it will also challenge your own understanding of faith, sacrifice, and devotion. The price of following Jesus. Before we dive into each apostle's death, let's pause for a moment. Christianity didn't begin as a powerful religion. It began as a small, persecuted movement in the heart of the Roman Empire. To the Jewish leaders, it was blasphemy. To the Romans, it was treason. Declaring Jesus is Lord was a direct challenge to Caesar himself. This is the world the apostles lived in. After Pentecost, they were filled with the Holy Spirit and scattered across the known world. They preached in marketplaces, synagogues, and palaces. They healed the sick, cast out demons, and converted thousands. But everywhere they went, enemies followed. Some were flogged, others imprisoned. Many were dragged before kings and governors, and most were eventually executed. Jesus had warned them, "If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you." He had also told them, "You will be brought before rulers and kings for my sake as a testimony to them." And history proves him right. The apostles' deaths were not random tragedies. They were direct consequences of their loyalty to Christ. And yet, they embraced their fate with courage, proving their message was true. The death of each apostle. Now let's uncover the final moments of the men who carried the gospel to the world. Peter, once the fisherman from Galilee, became the bold leader of the apostles. Though he once denied Jesus 3 times out of fear, after the resurrection, he was transformed into a fearless preacher. Peter traveled widely, performing miracles, raising the dead, and preaching in Jerusalem, Antioch, and finally Rome. There, his message clashed with Emperor Nero, who blamed Christians for the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD. Peter was arrested and condemned to die by crucifixion. But when faced with the cross, Peter made a humble request: "I am not worthy to be crucified in the same manner as my Lord." So the Romans crucified him upside down. His body hung inverted outside the city walls, a gruesome but powerful testimony to his devotion. Peter's death reminds us that true greatness is found in humility and sacrifice. Andrew, Peter's brother, carried the gospel to Greece. Boldly preaching against idols, he angered Roman authorities. Condemned to death, he was tied, not nailed, to an X-shaped cross, which we now call St. Andrew's Cross. Tying rather than nailing meant a slower, more painful death. For 2 agonizing days, Andrew hung there. But instead of cursing his captors, he continued to preach to the crowds who gathered around him. His final words were of joy, thanking God for allowing him to suffer for Christ. Andrew's faith turned his cross of pain into a pulpit of hope. James the Greater. James, the brother of John, was the first apostle to die. In 44 AD, King Herod Agrippa, I sought to win favor with the Jews by persecuting Christians. James was captured and beheaded in Jerusalem. One account says the soldier guarding him was so moved by James's courage that he declared himself a Christian and was executed alongside him. James's death marked the beginning of a wave of martyrdom that would define the early church. John, the beloved disciple, had a unique fate. Unlike the others, he did not die a violent death, though he certainly suffered. Roman authorities once attempted to kill him by plunging him into a pot of boiling oil. Miraculously, he emerged unharmed. Seeing this, his enemies exiled him to the rocky island of Patmos. It was there that John received visions of heaven, the throne of God, the Lamb who was slain, the final battle between good and evil, and the glory of the New Jerusalem. He wrote the book of Revelation, one of the most mysterious and powerful texts in the Bible. After his exile, John returned to Ephesus, where he lived to old age, eventually dying peacefully around 100 AD. John's survival was no accident. God preserved him so he could leave behind writings that continue to inspire believers today. Philip carried the gospel to Asia Minor. In Hierapolis, he confronted pagan priests and performed miracles. But his boldness cost him his life. Tradition says he was either crucified upside down or stoned to death. Some accounts say his daughters also became powerful witnesses in the region. Philip's death shows how the apostles did not back down, even in hostile lands. Bartholomew, also called Nathaniel, preached in Armenia and India. He openly denounced idol worship, which enraged local rulers. What followed is perhaps the most gruesome of all the apostles' deaths. According to tradition, he was flayed alive, his skin stripped from his body, and then beheaded. Even in his agony, he refused to deny Christ. Today, he is often depicted in art holding his own skin as a symbol of faith under unimaginable suffering. Bartholomew's death shocks us, but it also proves the depth of his devotion. Matthew, the former tax collector turned gospel writer, traveled to Ethiopia. There he preached boldly against the king's immorality. Angered, the king ordered his execution. Matthew was run through with a spear or sword while standing at the altar. His death reminds us that the gospel often challenges power, and truth can cost your life. Thomas, famous for doubting until he touched Jesus' wounds, carried the gospel to India. There he established churches and converted many. But in 72 AD, while praying in a cave, he was attacked by soldiers and pierced with spears. Thomas, the doubter-turned-believer, died a martyr's death, proving his faith was unshakable to the very end. James, the son of Alphaeus, became the leader of the Jerusalem church. Tradition says he was thrown from the pinnacle of the temple. Miraculously, he survived the fall. But before he could recover, an angry mob beat him with clubs and stoned him to death. James' death fulfilled Jesus' prophecy. They will deliver you up to councils, and you will be beaten in synagogues. Thaddeus, also called Jude, carried the gospel to Persia. There he faced violent opposition from pagan priests. Tradition says he was beaten with clubs and killed by arrows or spears. His martyrdom reminds us that the gospel often clashes with the forces of darkness. Simon the Zealot, once a revolutionary zealot, transformed into a preacher of peace. He traveled to Persia and Africa, where he preached boldly. Accounts of his death vary. Some say he was crucified, others say he was sawn in half. Whatever the case, Simon's death shows that a man of violence had been transformed into a man willing to die for love. Judas Iscariot, Judas the betrayer, met a tragic end. After betraying Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, he was overwhelmed with guilt. The Bible says he hanged himself, while another account says he fell and his body burst open. Unlike the others, his death was not one of faith but of despair. His story serves as a warning about the cost of betrayal. The martyrs of the early church. When we speak of the apostles' deaths, it's impossible not to also remember the other martyrs, the faithful men and women of the early church who shed their blood for the name of Jesus. The word martyr comes from the Greek martes, which means witness, and truly, their deaths became the greatest witness of their faith. The very first Christian martyr was Stephen, one of the 7 deacons chosen in Acts 6. Stephen was bold in preaching Christ to the Jewish leaders. and his words cut them to the heart. In rage, they dragged him outside the city and stoned him to death. As he was dying, Stephen lifted his eyes to heaven and saw Jesus standing at the right hand of God. His final words were a prayer of forgiveness for his killers, just as Jesus had prayed on the cross. Stephen's death marked the beginning of widespread persecution in Jerusalem. Then there was Paul, once a persecutor of Christians, later transformed into their greatest missionary. Paul traveled across the Roman Empire, planting churches, writing letters, and enduring beatings, shipwrecks, and imprisonment. Finally, in Rome, under Emperor Nero, Paul was beheaded for his faith. His letters still form a large part of the New Testament, meaning his voice continues to shape Christianity even after his death. And it wasn't just Stephen and Paul. Thousands of early believers, men, women, young and old, were thrown into prisons, burned alive, torn apart by wild beasts, or crucified for refusing to renounce Jesus. These martyrs proved that Christianity was not built by swords or political power, but by the blood of those who would not deny their Lord. Their sacrifice gave strength to future generations. As the church father Tertullian once wrote, "The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church." Patterns in their deaths. Looking at these accounts, one pattern becomes clear. Almost all the apostles died as martyrs. Only John died a natural death. But here's what makes this so powerful. If the resurrection of Jesus was a lie, why would they die for it? People may die for something they think is true, but never for something they know is false. The apostles saw the risen Christ with their own eyes. They touched him, ate with him, walked with him. That's why they were willing to give their lives. Their deaths are the strongest evidence that Jesus truly rose from the dead. Why their deaths matter. The apostles' deaths were not wasted. They became seeds that spread the gospel across the world. Peter in Rome, Thomas in India, Bartholomew in Armenia, Matthew in Ethiopia. Each carried the light of Christ into dark places. Their blood became the foundation of the church. Their deaths challenge us today. Following Jesus isn't about comfort. It's about commitment. It's about being willing to stand for truth, no matter the cost. So now you know the untold deaths of Jesus' apostles. Peter crucified upside down, Andrew tied to a cross for days, James beheaded, John boiled in oil yet spared, Thomas pierced with spears, Bartholomew flayed alive. One by one, they laid down their lives, not for wealth, not for power, but for a message they knew was true, that Jesus Christ is Lord, risen from the dead. And here's the question for you. If your faith cost you your life, would you still hold on? The apostles did. And because they did, the gospel reached us today. So let their deaths inspire you to live with boldness, to stand for truth, to carry the message of Jesus with courage. If you found this video eye-opening, don't let it end here. Share it with others. Leave a comment with the apostles' story that impacted you most. And don't forget to subscribe for more hidden truths of the Bible. Because history is not just about the past. It's a mirror reflecting who we are today.